Welcome back. We have Dr. John Hovannessian here on behalf of Harvard Eye. Well, welcome. Nice to have you here.
It's great to be back. How are you this morning, Lisa?
I'm excellent. I'm excellent. And we're going to talk about sun damage, which is something I think we all need to know about here in Southern California.
It's summertime, and this is when it happens. We're all outdoors because it's beautiful. A little hot lately, but beautiful outside, and it's really sunny. We have a lot of, very close, relatively unfiltered sun that comes to us during the day, and we have to be careful about it.
Well, exactly. And I think we probably don't think about our eyes. We probably think more about our skin, especially women. We're like, oh my gosh, I can't get sun because I have to do this and that. And the first picture that you have is really why we're so worried about our skin. Yeah,
and it's a humbling thing to see because we all see some part of this spectrum from youth on the left side to beautiful but more aged skin, and in the lower part of the picture is what's actually happening in the cells. There's a loss of the supportive tissue that makes our skin springy and youthful, and the same thing happens in the eye. The tissues of the eyeball are remarkable because in the front of the eye it's clear, but it's made of the same stuff as the rest of our skin. And the outer coating of the eye, the white, what we call the white part of the eye, is covered with a mucous membrane that is just like skin, except it's wet mucous membrane like we have inside our mouth. And it allows our eye to be comfortable and to provide a protective coating. But it's susceptible to the same UV damage that other parts of our skin are. And even skin cancers of the eye can happen. We're not going to show pictures of that today, but I do have a couple pictures of the kinds of things that can happen to the skin of the eye. So
I mean, one of the most common things I think we do is to shade ourselves, right? So I wear big giant hats when I go to the beach or the pool, which you can see here, the gal big hats, and sunglasses, right? So, but you have to be really careful about what sunglasses you use.
You do, that's right. And one thing we know for sure is that a big broad-brimmed hat with sunglasses works better than either one alone. And so wear both when you're outside, and especially when you're gardening, because gardening is dangerous for the eyes anyway. So many injuries happen from people leaning down and poking themselves on plants. But so you want sunglasses that have a good wraparound design. These that the model is wearing are pretty, but they're not particularly as protective because a lot of light gets in from the side.
Okay.
So something that wraps around is better, and something that has UV protection, complete UV protection.
Right.
Makes a big difference. And so those are kind of the two things to look for. You don't need to spend a fortune on sunglasses to have good protection, though. A lot of the stuff you get at the drugstore is really just fine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the fancy ones have a little better optics. You see a little better. They have a little better lenses, and they're certainly a nice fashion statement if you like those, but you don't have to spend a fortune to protect your eyes, not at all.
Okay, all right, excellent. Now we have some pictures here of the eye, and I'm going to let you pronounce them because I don't think I can.
Sure, well the first one is a really, almost all of us have some degree of Pingueculum. Pingueculum is a common term, and it's often looks yellow like this spot. It's usually on the inner corner of the eye, toward the nose, sometimes on the outer corner as well. They happen in both places. They will look yellow. Sometimes they're sort of triangular in shape with the one edge up against the colored part of the eye, the cornea and the iris there. And this is a small one that's yellow. This is sun damage, though. This is the breakdown of collagen that is in the eye that causes this yellowing effect and thickening effect. And these often become red. The blood vessels become, engorged and thickened and make our eyes look tired and make us, that look like the bright white eyes of a youngster compared to the sort of yellowish eyes of a person who's had a few birthdays. This is one of the things that causes that difference.
Now the next slide has, it's a little bit more pronounced. That's the same thing?
Yeah, also a Pingueculum in this case, raised, and this one, not so much triangular shaped, a little different color, more whitish. Also the same thing though, it's caused by, again, breakdown of tissue. But this one being a little bit raised, you can tell it's raised because the way the light is coming across, it's casting a shadow on that right side. That'll cause irritation very often because the eyelid blinks and bumps into it and causes friction and uncomfortable feeling in the eye.
So what do you do?
Well, in certain cases, we'll do surgery for these conditions. Often just lubricant drops are enough to make it feel better. And often that occurs because the person has a little bit of dryness of their eyes to begin with. And by treating that dry eye, we help with, make the pingueculum feel more comfortable. In other words, not every one of these needs to be surgically removed. I certainly wouldn't suggest that.
However, if you don't like it, you don't like the look, or it's irritating more so with the drops.
Yeah, thanks for asking, because there is surgery for this. Now, I should, just to be clear, insurance doesn't like to pay for pingueculum surgery because they consider it cosmetic, even if it's being done because the eye is irritated, but it can be done. Okay. Whereas if it's growing onto the surface, the seeing part of the eye, which is the next condition, pterygium, that is something that they will, more often cover. So what you can see here, if you look closely at the picture, is that this fleshy growth is coming onto the colored part of the eye, onto the cornea sits in front of the colored part of the eye, and it's onto that clear part of the tissue. And you can see here, because it's sort of crossing into the pupil, the dark circle in the center of the brown, it's starting to affect vision. And,
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, and that causes distortion in the way the eye sees. And this is not only uncomfortable, not only unsightly, but it's vision threatening.
And this is all from the sun?
All from sun damage, yeah.
Wow.
The more the incidence of these goes way up as we get closer to the equator. So we see them around the world in lots of countries. In Latin America, it's really common. And sometimes they can grow right into the center of the vision part of the eye. It's a little hard to look at for some people, but this is also pterygium. Thankfully, this is treatable. We have good surgery that is not painful, that removes it, and with a very low chance of regrowth. And I mention that because there's a lot of misinformation out there, both among eye doctors and the public, that if you have surgery for this, it's going to hurt and it's going to come right back. Neither of those is true.
Wow.
The surgery is, more or less, the surgery itself is absolutely painless. Afterwards, the healing is fairly painless. A little irritation is normal. But we see them come back, anywhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 5% of the time, so they can come back.
Right.
But in the old days, it was 50%, 50.
Wow.
So yeah, that's why a lot of people say, well, gosh, don't have surgery for that condition. Better to leave it alone. It's only going to hurt and come back, and that's just not true.
So when you say you're using medication for that, is it a steroid?
Well, after surgery, we use medication, yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have a medication that makes these feel better, and that brings up a really good question. So what should you do if you look in the mirror and you see a growth like this, whether it's pingueculum or pterygium, the name's not important. Does it irritate you? If it irritates your eye, you can use lubricant drops. Those are very helpful. There's also an eye whitening drop now that is over the counter that is fairly safe to use, as long as you don't grossly overuse it. It's called Lumify. Lumify, Lumify. It's in all the pharmacies, and it's a little more expensive than the Visine class of medicines. Visine and similar medicines have blood vessel constrictors that often wear off, and when they wear off, those blood vessels get real big again. So you take it, this is why eye doctors tell you not to take those eye whitening drops, because you end up with more red eyes than you started with.
Oh, interesting.
Lumify seems to work better, and it doesn't have that wearing off effect that causes the redness. And so it's one that we are a little more comfortable with. It's a real safe medication we've had in stronger form as a glaucoma medicine for a long time, and it's now being sold for whitening the eyes. So.
Interesting. Okay, good. And then our last one is quite a bit darker.
Yeah, so when we see dark like this, we don't automatically think cancer.
I did.
Yeah.
I look right at it, but I'm like, oh no, he's not going to talk about cancer.
It's good
but
you think about it.
It seems like it would be.
Yeah, that's right. Melanoma is a cancer that kills. It's a skin cancer that kills, and it does occur on the eye. Now, lots of people, particularly people with darker skin, have pigment on their eyes. It's usually not this intense, not this dark and concentrated. And when there's pigment on the eye, that does not mean cancer. In fact, this is not necessarily a cancerous lesion here, but it certainly is a suspicious one that should be followed and possibly removed. So see your doctor if you're in question. Any eye doctor can kind of weigh in on this. And we have specialists, who are cornea specialists who see and treat these things, whether it means surgery or just monitoring it over time. We don't always do surgery when we see a pigment spot on the eye, so don't be afraid to see your your eye doctor.
Now, the pigment spot, though, you said could just be a natural thing, but couldn't this also be caused by the sun?
You bet. Pigment tends to get worse when there's, sunlight, when it's exposed to sunlight. Pigment is the body's response to protect the body, right? Pigment is there to absorb the harmful UV that the sun puts out, so it protects the delicate tissues underneath where the pigment is.
Okay.
But pigment cells, melanocytes, can grow in a cancerous way as well.
Right.
And that,
right. How do you compare this to a sunspot on the skin?
Yeah, so it's a little bit like a sunspot on the skin. Okay. This one probably is actually benign and not cancerous, the one we're looking at here, but its thickness causes a little bit of concern.
Right.
And this potentially would be something that we would remove just to be sure.
Be safe. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Wow, very interesting information. And of course, we definitely need to make sure we are in the shade.
Yeah. Keep those eyes in the shade.
Keep the eyes
Sunglasses.
and skin in the shade.
That's right. Wear your sunscreen too, you bet.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the information.
So good to see you. Happy to share it.
You too. If you want more information about anything we've just discussed, or you would like to have an exam of your eyes, you can always get in touch with Harvard Eye at harvardeye.com or call 949-951-2020. We'll be right back.